And we are live. It's been 15 long days since I've had the pleasure of sitting down with these gentlemen to talk some fights. We went one weekend without UFC and we're chomping at the bit to get back at it. And this weekend, we have UFC Fight Night, Volkov versus Rozenstruik. Heavyweight action, some other great fights on the card. Daniga versus Mobstar Evalev in the co-main event, and a couple of others down the card. We are going to get straight into it, but before we do, I would like to introduce you to our sponsors, EatAllReal.com. Let me grab the bar. Head on over to EatAllRealNutrition.com. Get yourself some delicious all real nutrition bars. And they got some sweet peanut butter out as well. Go over there to EatAllReal.com. Enter the code word SevereMMA and get you some. Gents, here we go. I'm looking forward to this. The card has a heavyweight headliner. Alexander Volkov coming back off his defeat from Tom Aspinall, comes in to face Jairzinho Rozenstruik in the heavyweight division, who is also coming off a loss to Curtis Blades. Two guys looking to get back on the horse in the heavyweight division, coming off two disappointing losses. I mean, Spencer, what's the story for you behind this heavyweight clash?
So for me, this is a fight similar to what Sean talked about when we previewed the Curtis Blades Chris Daukaus fight back in March. These are two guys that are pretty well established in the division where they are. They're kind of the gatekeepers to the upper echelon. They're the guy you have to beat in order to get into those top 5 matchups. We saw it with Aspinall. We saw Curtis Blades beat Jairzinho, and that sort of solidifies his spot. And so it's sort of a which one of them remains. It's sort of which one holds down that position and which one of them is forced to kind of take a little bit of a step back and maybe be the junior varsity version of that. And so it's one of those fights that I understand people are going to be like, yeah, they're just, they're not contenders. They're 7-8. These are guys that kind of keep this division moving. And one of the things I like about it is that these two guys actually fight pretty regularly versus some of these other heavyweights that are in the mix. And now I understand taking a pause for, make sure you get your championship opportunities and sorting out where you're going. But like these guys are just in there every 4 to 6 months and keep after it. And every time they lose, they're looking to get back on the horse, as you said. And so one of them is going to catch a second straight L here, but it should be an entertaining fight.
Yeah, I'm expecting it to be an entertaining fight. I mean, the majority of the time and nearly all of Jairzinho's Rozenstruik's time and the majority of Volkov's time has been spent on defeat so far in the UFC. Volkov, obviously former Bellator heavyweight champion, has come over and kind of had a mixed bag of results in the UFC. Has always kind of struggled once he's got to the upper echelon of the divisions. What's kind of are the takeaways that you see in this fight, Sean?
Yeah, I wouldn't expect it to be as exciting as a 2E, I don't think. We've had a lot of Borefests over the last few weeks in MMA, and I'm just hoping this is a heavyweight knockout early, because if it's not, we won't. I don't think it'll be necessarily like a Borefest in terms of a normal heavyweight Borefest where it gets sloppy and there's very little. Borefest is the wrong word, but a slopfest is probably a better word than the heavyweight. These are two lads who like to fight on the outside in very different ways, and when that happens a lot, we see Esparza versus Namajunas, two people who fight on the outside in very different ways, and neither of them end up fighting. And 25 minutes later, the poor old judges have to make a decision on which of these two useless fuckers wins. And I feel like that's what we could have here, because. And the thing about it is they both do it badly, right? And I actually have a podcast coming next week talking about how shitty fights like this shouldn't really be in the main event. Put people with the same rankings as these fucking useless heavyweights from 145 or 135 or 125 in the main event. We'll have a much better main event. You'll build stars in the future and the sport will be a lot better. But anyway, I've 30 minutes of our end coming on that next week. But this is the sort of fight that I just think really shows how badly the UFC have been promoting their fighters over the last few years. A fight like this shouldn't be in the main event. A fight like this, even if it is good, even if it is a big knockout, where are these two going? Like I think there is some hope for Rozenstruik. I think he could fight for a title in years to come if he improves in certain ways. Volkov, maybe, you never know as well, but probably not. And I just don't see the point of it. Like, what is this? It's a fine, middle of the road main event. You've Mobstar Evalev 15-0 in the co-main event. Why the fuck is he not the main event? But anyway,
can I ask you for a second? Because actually, I seen a graphic that Andy Hickey put up during the week, and it actually went through how many main events that there has been in what division since the start of 2021. And there's been.
See it. Can I guess? Can I guess heavyweight is like way more than all the rest of them?
Yes, and light heavyweight is close after. It actually almost perfectly goes down through the weights, bar a couple of the flyweights at the bottom. But since the start of 2021, there has been 12 main events that have been in heavyweight, 10 light heavyweight, and 9 at middleweight. So that's 20% of of all main events since the start of 2021 have been in the heavyweight division. Why do you think that is?
Because it's funny. Well, I have a full podcast on it, but it's laziness. It's the fact that they've already gotten paid by ESPN. It's that they don't really give a shit. There's no real big planning. It feels like there's a load of smart people there who are not making smart decisions and not doing the right thing. My list, where's my notebook over there? I have my list of things that I talked about earlier on. The podcast will be coming next week. But it's just baffling to me, and maybe I have myself worked up because I talked myself into going mad there for half an hour earlier on today. But it's just this is a real personification of the fight. Even before the fight, no matter what happens in the fight, it's just and the co-main event just really shows that even more. That this fight. Oh my God, I hate it. I hate this fight. It's a shitty fight as well. It's a really shitty fight. Maybe we get into the breakdown of it. But Harry wants to say something. Go on, Harry.
Let's do it. Harry, say your piece about the fight and break it down for us, and we can move on.
So I'm going to trigger somebody that's on this call, right? The reason they do it is because of name value, lads. No, anyway. Okay. So the real reason. The real reason that they're doing this is because the same reason as heavyweight boxing is the biggest and largest and most revered thing is because you can use big terminology and big adjectives about the size of the men, and people watching, the average person watching, if you put a 6'5" Jack dude on a poster, they can be like, fuck me, he must be good at fighting. Right? Like that meme that you see going around Instagram where you see some fucking absolute unit of a gentleman bodybuilder and they put DJ Demetrius Johnson next to him and like, explain to your missus how the guy on the left is going to win or whatever. Like I think Sean hit it, the nail on the head is that it's lazy marketing and it's lazy matchmaking because you can just vault these. Go on, Spencer.
I was just going to say, it's also a response to what fans want. Like this is what fans want, right? Like we just had 10 days ago where loads of folks that throw out I'm a huge UFC fan, I watch all the shows, are bitching and moaning about a fight that the four of us are absolutely bonkers about. Well, three of us for sure, and maybe Sean.
I know.
And Matoish Gamrot.
I've been a Gamrot fan before you even fucking was now.
We hadn't talked about him yet. I apologize, Shawnee T Podcasts.
That's okay.
But right, we just had that whole nonsense a week ago where people are saying, how is this a fucking main event? It's because they want this nonsense. It's because they want, as Harry said, these great big dudes that don't look like anybody they could pop that they think they could beat up, rather than these guys at 35 that they go, well, I'm 220 and whatever, I can take it. No, you can't, bro.
Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Like, are they known because they are being put into those spots all the time? Or are they known because they're known?
I think that this predates the UFC, to be fair. Like this goes all the way back to boxing and wrestling and whatever. Like you look at pro wrestling, right? You don't have a ton of small pro wrestlers. Like Rey Mysterio was amazing because he was small and he was still fucking jacked, lads. Let's not get away from that, right? But
small wrestlers are still like fucking 6 foot, which is a monster.
Right. Do you see what I mean, right? Like the spectacle of having a large human do combat sport type things, forget wrestling, it's all fucking fake and whatever, but having them do combat sports type things, that's revering to fans, right? So I agree that it's what I'm not going to say that's what fans want. I think that's what fans have been conditioned to expect, right? But as we'll get into when we talk about Mobstar Evalev and Daniga, skill for skill, it is a far superior fight.
The thing is, though, as well, I know we'll get to the fight in a second.
Let's not. Fuck it.
Yeah, fuck the fight. Yeah, we'll keep talking about this. More fun than breaking down a shitty fight. I know I'm not a boxing fan at all, really, right? But sometimes I hear like, oh, this next guy who's coming up and he's like 25-0 and he might be fighting, Gervonta Davis next or whoever it might be. If I hear that, I'm thinking like, do you know what? Maybe I'll tune in if he's on Sky or whatever, and I'll have a look at it, right? If it's fucking Derek Chisora, I'm not watching that shit. Like, I just don't care about that shit. And I feel like, why can't we build guys like Evalev to be like that? Why can't we, build whoever the next guy coming up is? And I don't think weight actually matters in MMA or in sport anymore because of McGregor, because of Floyd Mayweather and all of that. Look, the big heavyweight fight is always going to be the big heavyweight fight. But I'm telling you, it's not. And pro wrestling, you made the perfect example there, Harry, a while ago. Pro wrestling has completely changed in that fashion. Smaller guys now are way bigger stars. Look at AEW. All their stars are smaller guys. Look at MJF last night. He's not that big of a guy. He might be, 6 foot or whatever it might be, or a little bit less even. It's just the way it is now. It's getting more like that. People want to see skill. And there's a thing about it as well, and the final point I'll make in this, right? If you had Evalev, Ige, or Volkov, Rozenstruik in the main event here, there would be no difference in the amount of people tuning in. I guarantee you that. So you're deciding there, if you're the UFC, who do you want my audience to look at as the main event star? Do we want these going nowhere heavyweights, or do we want this 15-0 moving to 16-0 145er who could be fighting Max Holloway or Volkanovski, one of our stars, in 6 months or years time? Who do you want in that spot? And they choose the shitty heavyweights, and I cannot get past that. They're already getting paid for the card. It's not going to make any difference to the amount of people watching. It's not going to make any difference to the amount of hype. I don't understand it. Fair enough, it's a pay-per-view main event, and you have a massive heavyweight fight. If you've John Jones, or if you've a championship fight, or whatever it might be, no problem with that. I'm not anti-heavyweight. Or if it's a good heavyweight fight, let's say it's Taito Ivasa versus Silgani or something like that, no problem with that as the main event. Or Aspinall, they showed in the heavyweight division, like Aspinall, you can build him up by putting him in main events. He's coming up another one. No problem with that. I think it might be a bit quick. No problem. But why are they not doing that in other divisions? It seems like they're not doing it at all. And they don't do it until you get to like Calvin Kattar level, where you're a good fighter, a good tough fighter, but still at a certain level. It's almost as if they wait for these guys to fail at the top level before they start putting them into main events. And that, to me, is the most idiotic fucking thing you could possibly do. Anyway, rant over. Bye. Take it away, lads.
Hey,
okay, so I'm gonna jump in, and can I just say, can we not talk about any more fights? Can we just wind Sean up a little bit more and just let him go?
Watch it. He's already wound up. I don't know if there's any more. I
think hurling or something.
The only thing I have to come back on with what Shawnee was saying is, I think the reason why people look to these fights is because not everyone likes fights like you like fights. Right, I think people look for fights for different reasons. Do I think that the mass populace is changing? Yes, I think so. But when I was in New York, right, I went to a bar and I went and watched some of the fights. Let me tell you, the fights that were the most skillful, no one was watching them. Everyone had gone to the bar to get a drink, or had gone for a slash, or was texting their mates, right? When there was, I can't remember what fight it was, but it was fucking trash, and it was a bit of a slobber knocker, and it was very lacking in skill, and they loved it, right? I think that the large population of MMA fans right now still look at MMA as a means for entertainment and violence, and they look at that as, they look for damage. out and out damage, regardless of skill, before they look for skill. Whereas the 4 guys on this call, yeah, of course, damage is the thing that we're looking for, but we're looking for it to be skillfully applied. Now, unless anyone has anything egregious to say, I'm going to quickly run over this fight. Anyone?
No,
all right, good, excellent. So, look, as always, Shawnee sort of summed this up, right? This fight's about range. Both of these guys like to fight on the outside. Jairzinho likes a big left hook. Volkov likes long kicks. If Volkov can keep Jairzinho away, he'll win. If Jairzinho manages to find a way to get past those kicks and come inside, or force Volkov to chase him and come inside, he will land big left hooks. I think that Jairzinho isn't really all that good, and he has a decent left hook and a decent body kick, but Volkov's seen those before. He's like 6'7". He should win this fight. Let's move on.
Boom, let's do it. Daniga.
Can we talk a little bit more about it? Let me quickly say my breakdown. I agree with a lot of what Harry says there. I think, and Rozenstruik is an interesting fighter, I think, tactically, if not in terms of like the main event here, because he reminds me a little bit of Holly Holm fighting on the outside with less, kind of ability on the outside, I suppose, but also with the same amount of like knockout power from that position, even though he possesses that knockout power. And he's such a frustrating fighter that I feel like there is a bump there in him. That's why I said earlier on Volkov probably not, and Jairzinho or Rozenstruik maybe. And if he can show that, it might be the one thing we get from this main event. If he can show that he can break inside against Volkov and land those big shots, we might actually have not necessarily a star from this, but someone who we can look at going forward. And Volkov, the fact that he fights long and will almost force Rozenstruik to come inside and land those big shots, it might be such like an obtuse matchup in terms of the length that if it forces him to do it, and it forces him to change the way he fights kind of wholly. But I don't know. Anyway, that's the one part of it I'm kind of looking forward to. Is just that range and how he breaks that range.
That's it. It's kind of dependent on Rozenstruik to kind of come in and implement his game plan a little bit better, where I think that's the only kind of exciting ending to this fight, whereas that if Volkov fights at range and Rozenstruik can't get in, it's more than likely going to go to a decision, and that's nobody wants that. So but we have seen Volkov go off before. He does have a knockout in him, but generally he does like to fight on the outside. Anybody else have anything to add to this before we go?
The thing that that frustrates me the most about Jairzinho Rozenstruik is, and fucking Joe Rogan talks about this all the fucking time whenever he gets a chance. He's like, oh, he's so used to fighting massive heavyweight kickboxers, right? But he's not fighting a kickboxing anymore. And I think when you watch Jairzinho Rozenstruik fight, it's almost as if he thinks he's in a kickboxing ring, which is much smaller than the cage and has corners, right? So he can find his way along the ropes and he can force guys to almost come into him, expecting that they're going to corner him in one of the said corners. And then he can land those big bombs and he can explode out of those positions. The octagon just isn't like that, right? You're going to catch yourself in an endless loop of just going round and round and round and round in a circle, looking for a corner that doesn't exist. And I mean, that's like a fundamental fucking difference to fighting from kickboxing to MMA. That's why I sort of shake my head at him. Like, how many MMA fights is he deep now? He's in double digits, and if he hasn't worked that out already, I mean, what are we doing?
Indeed. As we move on to the co-main event, Daniga versus fuck off. Daniga versus Mobstar Evalev. This is a fight that gets me going. I think we know what to expect out of Daniga. We've seen him time and time again in there. I think this fight and the story of this fight is what we're going to see from Mobstar Evalev, a guy who's undefeated, who hasn't really had too big a test, has won a couple of easy fights. His last win was against Hakeem Dawodu, a good Canadian prospect that was coming through. That's a good win. He handled Dawodu with relative ease on the floor, on the mat. I mean, Nick Glenn split decision, another close fight. Mike Grundy, another unanimous decision. He wants to get the fight down. He wants to put you on your arse. He wants to punch you. He wants to choke you. That's what he's going to do to Daniga. It's up to Daniga to keep him up, and let's see what he's like on the feet. I mean, have I kind of summed that up? We'll go to Spencer. We'll go to Spencer first. Have I summed that up kind of correctly?
Yeah, you summed it up correctly. I don't want to just do the like, we know who Daniga is. We absolutely do. But I think he's also one of those guys that deserves such credit for the strength of schedule he fights, the toughness he's shown, like the ability he has. He is a guy that is going to make you be your absolute best in order to beat him. And if you can't be, he's going to be right there in your face and he's going to be swinging at you. He's got that Hawaiian chin. He hits like a ton of bricks. Like he can screw this up for Mobstar Evalev on Saturday and take that 0. And it's going to be incumbent on Evalev to get in there and wrestle as much as he can, to control things on the canvas and not make it about mat returns and expending too much energy over the course of that fight. Because Daniga isn't going anywhere. He's not a guy that you get out of there. He's not somebody that you just run through. And I mean, listen, if Evalev runs through him, then we're going to be back here next week and going crazy about this guy, as we probably should. But this is that test that he needs. This is that step up where we see, are you ready to be a top 10 fighter? Are you ready to fight one of these names that we all know even more than Daniga? Or do you need to kind of take one step back so we can get to taking 2 steps forward? And we're going to see, man, because this is a hell of a fight. This should be, truthfully, this should be the main event. As Sean was saying, as we talked about before, this should be the main event, because these are guys, even if you consider Ige a guy that's going to be kind of fixed in this position, in that 7 to 10 range, Evaloev has the upside to be a contender. And that's the guy you should be showcasing this weekend.
Indeed. Berger asks, can Daniga win this? The odds are crazy high, although I've seen those pay-per-views that Evalev is on. I can't
Ian
remember
has just left the building there for a second, but we shall continue. Ian, you're back here. Oh, Spencer has left the building as well. We are all gone haywire there. But anyway, who's here?
We're all here, Shawnee.
We're all here, Sean.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
Maybe
my
it's
bad.
you.
Yeah.
Maybe it is me.
Yeah, sorry. Everything. Yeah, everyone is still here. I can hear everybody. So, yeah, I was saying, can Daniga win this? And I think he definitely can win this. I mean, I didn't mean to belittle him by just saying we know we can do. You summed it up quite perfectly. You know, only one win in these last 4 fights, but those losses came from Calvin Kattar, Korean Zombie, and Josh Emmett. And the man even deserves a belt for getting in there, going 15 minutes with Josh Emmett, taking his best punches and you know, standing back up to fight. That was a competitive fight. He lost by unanimous decision, but Ige certainly can win this, Sean, can't he?
Yeah, he can, but I don't think he will, unfortunately for him. I think Spencer summed it up very well there, and you talked about it as well, Ian. It's one of those fights where if Ige can manage to kind of keep it on the feet and do what he needs to do there, there's a way he absolutely can win the fight, especially over 3 rounds. But I think Evalev is very good on the feet as well. I watched a couple of his fights there yesterday, and it was one of those ones where I watched him, and I watched him without the sound on, just to kind of to not have, you know, Paul Felder or Joe Rogan or Daniel Cormier, whoever, roaring this thing and this thing and this thing. And you look at him, and it was the Barzola fight I watched, because I watched a lot of Barzola over the last year or so in Bellator, and I know how good of a fighter he is and what he can do. And that was a close fight, but also a fight that happened in 2019. And he was showing the improvements he made in. He's fought Mike Grundy-Nicklins and Hakeem Dawodu since then. And I think if you can beat a guy like Barzola in lots of the stand-up kind of back and forth that he did, there's very few guys in that division that you can't beat. Now, you know, he might come up against someone who, a Max Holloway or a Volkanovski, but that's the top of the division. I think I really rate Barzola. I'll say it again. And that fight really showed to me that he can hang there. Now, and the point I'm making there is I'm not talking about him as some world-class striker or anything like that. But if you're a good enough striker to hang against the likes of Barzola, the likes of Dawodu, whoever else it might be, it really helps your wrestling, because you don't have to go, you know, wrestle, and then I need plan B. His striking isn't the plan B. His striking is is a plan that he can have over 3 rounds. He can go the full distance with it, or 5 rounds if he needs to. And when I see something like that in a fighter as good as him on the ground, I think that's very dangerous. And another thing is, before I throw it back, I think, and one of my best this week, I've gone for him to win by submission, even though it's a bit crazy. But the reason I went for it is I don't think Ige is the giving up type, if you get me. He's not the type of guy who, and by giving up, I don't mean tapping or whatever like that. I mean, when he's taken down, just giving up that position and laying there, I think he might give Evalev enough rope to hang him, if you get me. Like, he will move in a certain way, give up side control, and maybe even give up the mount and things like that. And if you do that against Evalev and you put your neck out there, it could be a very, very bad time for you.
Indeed, it could, and it would be interesting to see. I mean, for me, looking at Evalev, what I was impressed with is that how he threatens with his takedowns, but uses big overhand shots to kind of, similar enough to what Khabib did to Conor that time, where he will level change, may allude to his opponent to make him look like he's going for the takedown, then land those big shots over the head. And like, when those shots land, they're going to do damage. If they don't land, he doesn't really have to worry too much about anyone taking him down, because who's going to want to take him down? So he has that confidence in his ability. It's similar to what we've spoken about, like, time and time again, when it comes to really, really high level grapplers can really let loose on the feet, because they don't have to worry about getting taken down. When you're looking at two of these guys' weapons, Harry, number one, maybe how can Daniga maybe keep Evalev off him in this fight? I know Daniga, looking back at a few of his fights, has a wicked jab, something that he can use, but he's going to need a lot more than that to keep someone like Evalev off of him, isn't he?
Yes. So I think from Daniga's perspective, the thing that I fear, and I have some very big technical questions to ask of this fight. The first one of Daniga is, when he's moving and when he's resetting his position, he likes to skip his feet together and like jug his hands together. As soon as those feet come together, Mobstar is going to start to read that, and he's going to start to use the resets to level change. So if I'm Daniga, the first thing I want to do is skip my feet either all the way out, if that's something that, physiologically he just has to do to tell himself that he's resetting, or just stop doing it completely. The second is he's going to have to use, and sure, I don't know whether people are going to like this, but he's going to have to use jiu-jitsu to get back up, right? So something we saw in the Jack Shaw fight in his last performance, I've forgotten what the lad's name was that he fought, Timur Valiev. What did Jack do? He got took down. He used butterfly hooks immediately to get himself back up. Fine. What happened in the Nick Lentz fight against Mobstar? He used guillotines to get back up. Right? It wasn't, he knew 100%, he knew he wasn't finishing those guillotines. He just used them to create space and get back to his feet, right? If I'm Daniga, I need to do 3 things. The first one is not bite on the feints. The second one is make the read that Mobstar moves to his left-hand side when he throws a jab. And the second thing is to use jiu-jitsu to get back to my feet. Because Mobstar Evalev looked just fine on the feet against Hakeem Dawodu. The one place that Hakeem wants to be is on the feet. And go and watch the first takedown that Mobstar hits on Hakeem Dawodu. He gets Hakeem so comfortable with the striking range that he basically kisses the top of his feet to ankle pick him, right? Like, the ability that Mobstar has now to draw fighters into one scenario of comfortability and then take them all the way out of it is fantastic. And Daniga, we know, is a great athlete. And what did Hakeem Dawodu do for the first takedown? He tried to out-athlete his way back to his feet. What happened?
He used a great single leg there to create a scramble. And then in that scramble, he took Dawodu's back, which I thought was very impressive.
Yes. Exactly. So I think Shawnee actually has something. I mean, basically, Sean stole most of my points of my breakdown, which happens all of the time. But I think Ige is somebody that is happy to put himself in bad positions if it means his back is not on the mat. That's not where you want to be against Mobstar Evalev.
No, it definitely isn't. And something else I like about Evalev is he doesn't just settle for position. He's always landing shots. He's always looking to create damage, and he's always looking to score points, which is so important. We don't need to kind of elude on that, and we won't get into a judging talk here, but it's something
come on.
You love it.
Everyone loves that. Go on.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to seeing how Evalev goes against someone like Daniga. It's a solid test for him. It's a worthy test. I hope that he makes weight. He had trouble on the scales the last time. He had to pull out the last time against Ilia Topuria because of weight issues, I believe. So let's make sure that he goes and makes weight this time, and we can move along to the next fight, which is, Mike Trisano versus Lucas Almeida. And I'm going to go to you, Spencer, about this fight. Mike Trisano and his fantastic mullet is going in here against Lucas Almeida.
He may not have the mullet right now. That's part of it. Like he sort of goes in between whether he's got the mullet and whether he doesn't. Like he's not fully committed to being a mulleted man. And so
release him, cut him.
I think you'd rock a nice mullet yourself, Spencer.
No, the mullet doesn't work well. It took a long time to grow this to where it is as well. So it ain't going anywhere. It's just staying like this until I reach the point that Harry reached some years ago and just get it all off again. Trisano's a guy, like he's confounding to me because, and maybe it's just me, maybe I just have elevated expectations of him or think highly of him, but he's just hasn't been as good as I've expected him to be or want him to be. Now, the losses are to two good fighters in Grant Dawson and Hakeem Dawodu, who's getting lots of mention on this podcast today. But the wins they're just wins. And this is a fight he should win. This is a fight he should dominate. I talked to him Wednesday. He sort of knows he needs to go out and start making statements. We talked about the Dawodu fight, how numbers-wise, percentages-wise, he's landing at a decent clip, but it's just not enough. There's just not enough activity from him. There's not enough variety, and he knows that he needs to go out and change that up. And against Lucas Almeida, who is a Contender Series guy, who lost on the Contender Series, it was the only loss of his career, goes out, gets a win on the regional circuit, gets a call up here. This is a fight that if Mike Trisano wants to be fighting those Hakeem Dawodu top 15 fringy guys or further, you got to go out and smoke this dude on Saturday. You got to just go and run through this dude and look impressive. And thus far in his UFC career, he's had some good wins, but he hasn't had that one that really makes you step up and go, let me keep paying attention to Mike Trisano. And so if he doesn't get it this weekend, I think it tells us that he's kind of just settled into this position as a middle-class featherweight going forward.
Nice. Anybody have anything to add on this fight before we move along? Okay, I'm going to whip through the next two fights really quickly. That's Pollyanna Battaglio versus Karine Silva in the 125-pound division. Both similar kind of stylistic fighters, both like the pressure forward. Both have strong top games, and both of them got very, very tired in their last fights. That's one, like, a kind of a theme, and I know that most of the fighters I was kind of looking at and watching tape back on this card, you're going to hear me saying that a lot tonight. A lot of the fighters on this card start strong and then finish very, very tired and fade out in fights. And this is the case with the two of these women, and it'll be interesting. I know Battaglio hasn't fought in over a year now. She's coming back after a bit of a layoff. Karine Silva, obviously, she lost in her last fight too, so both of them desperately in need of a win. It should be a decent enough fight but it'll probably fade out and end up going to a decision eventually. So maybe a little bit of early excitement, and it'll probably fizzle out is what I predict for that fight. Osborne versus Saruka Ashta in the flyweight division. Ashta only 4-3 inside the UFC. Very, very, very low record, and he's fought a couple of times in there as well, but he's a heavy hitter, likes to switch stances, lands big, heavy shots on his opponents. He also tires out as the fight goes on, and that's due to his fight style. He just wants to go and take the head off. He throws heavy hands, he throws heavy kicks, he wants to land big early, and if that works, he knocks a guy out. If that doesn't work, he seems to get tired in fights. He's
the one kind of surprisingly slow flyweight. Like
He
flyweight, we
is.
think about speed, we think about quick, we think about everything. And he's kind of the one guy to me that just feels out of place because he's a little bit plodding.
Yeah, it's just like he's trying to force his shots a little bit too much and land with ferocious power. But, you know, like I said, if it works, it's great. If it doesn't, he gets tired. And I think if you're Osborne here, you're going to want to fight on the front foot and push him back, because when I seen Ashdev moving back, he looked a little less uncomfortable, I think. And Osborne will just want to get into that boxing range. He's an awkward southpaw. He wants to win. He wants to kind of box in range. Sorry, I'm distracted by a hurling question there that just came in. We will answer that at the end. Osborne just wants to fight at boxing range, land a straight left. He does kind of fight with a wide stance, so he's going to have to be careful of Ashdev's heavy leg kicks early on, or it could mess him up for the rest of the fight. But I mean, it's going to be a decent fight, hopefully in the 125-pound division. If Osborne is on form and at the top of his game, he should get the win here, which moves us along to a fight that Harry is desperate to break down, and that's Alonso Minifield versus Asgar Masaraf. Sorry, I know you were checking out Masaraf's record as the week, and it's been changing by the day, Harry, hasn't it?
Yeah, we've got a really interesting case here. I think a really rare case in the UFC. When I was looking at Asgar's record at the start of the week, it was something like 26 wins and 7 losses or something. It's now 19 wins and 12 losses. So him being brought to the light of the UFC has brought to light some other things, I think. And I'm going to say this extremely plainly, and I wouldn't say it unless I truly believed it. The last 3 lads that he has fought have been paid to lose. All 3 of them have been finished inside a couple of seconds. Allegedly. I have no receipts of payments, but go and watch the fights and you tell me what you think. The first guy, 3 fights ago, he goes in, Asgar throws a head kick, your man blocks it, and then it's like, oh shit, I'm supposed to be wobbled here, and then bounds about the cage a bit, takes 1 leg kick, goes down, and the referee's like, okay, I understand what's happening, stops the fight. The next guy, he gets cracked immediately, and then runs into a spinning side kick. Like, you can see how clearly Asgar's going to spin, and your man ducks his head. And I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? So there's an interesting record here. There's an interesting fighter here. We don't know how good he actually is, because it doesn't seem like he's been fighting UFC level competition. There's not a ton of YouTube tape on him outside of the pancration fights. What I will say is, for a light heavyweight, he is absolutely massive. Absolutely ginormous of a man. Now, Minifield is the same. Something that is interesting about Asgar's game is he's a light heavyweight that likes to throw spinning hook kicks. He likes to throw head kicks. He has big power shots off those kicks. He has a really, really wicked low leg kick. Whether it's as wicked to stop a man in one shot, I don't know, but we're going to find out. I think Minifield, regardless of the skill set of Asgar, Minifield is an interesting test, because it felt like a lot of the guys that Asgar has fought up to this point have been relatively unathletic, regional level guys. Minifield is the opposite of that. Go and watch him versus the other action man in that division, which is William Knight. Go and just, refuse to do any wrestling and just launch each other with physics all over the cage. The only wrestling I've seen from Asgar was about 2019, when some lad called Kone shot a couple of double legs on him and he defended them pretty well. He had nice bicep and wrist control. He had good whizzer control. He used his head well. Really, this is a complete unknown as to who Asgar is. We are going to find out on Saturday. He could be the next light heavyweight prospect. He could be an absolute shithouse. And somebody of Minifield's level, it's a really nice way to ease him into the division. Minifield's not going to win a title anytime soon. We're not going to see him in a title contender. We're not going to see him in the top 5 anytime soon. He doesn't have amazing stand-up. He's an incredible athlete, but he doesn't have great grappling either. The way that I wrote down in my notes about William... I can hear myself. The one thing I said about the William Knight and I've lost my train of thought now, and Minifield fight is watching those two grapple was as if you'd seen two lads have a combined 6 jiu-jitsu classes in their life. And they're like, go on, lads, off you go.
It was big, meaty men slapping meat. Shout out.
It was big, meaty men slapping meat. It was. Yeah,
indeed. Yeah, good breakdown there. The big question is, will Masaraf be a prospect or will he be a shithouse? We'll find out on Saturday night. And I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'm looking forward to the next fight too. And rematch in the 115-pound division in the strawweight division. Felice Herrig is back to face Karolina Kowalkiewicz in the strawweight division. Spencer, it's a rematch. It's the first time we've seen Felice Herrig in a while. She's not 1-3. Karolina is not 1-5. Both of these women need a win here on Saturday night.
Yeah, they do. And first and foremost, I'm just happy that they're both back. I'm happy that they're both competing still. There's always the little concern of should they be? Like Karolina is clearly, and she's been open about dealing with some of the depression issues and, you know, frustrations about losing and health issues outside of that. And the last fight with Jessica Penne didn't last long. And so you wonder, is it now at a point that it's just purely a mental thing? At least she's got the benefit of having fought Felice and beaten Felice before, so maybe that bolsters things. For Felice, last fight was against Verna Jean de Hobach, gets taken down and submitted in less than 2 minutes, and it's just kind of, you know, this is what happens. Harry's sitting in the dark, throwing up his hands because these things happen against the former Invicta champ. I'm happy that they're back. I want to see if either of them show anything that makes you feel like and gives you a sense that this is more than just a one-off, that this is more than just kind of the very tail end of things. I think it probably is. I think they're 37 and 36 respectively. So not as old as my old ass, but old for fight age. And so maybe this is the come back and try to get one last one, which never really tends to go well in MMA. But I'm just happy that they're both back and excited to be getting in the cage, and hopefully we get a little bit of a renaissance from both of them, and we see a good fight this weekend.
Indeed, yeah. I think it's a fair fight to put either one of these women in, considering the path that they have been on in recent years. So we'll see what happens. Both desperate for a win. Watch the draw incoming. Anybody else have anything to add about this fight? Harry Powell.
I actually quite like this fight. Maybe I shouldn't, but yeah, I quite like it. I mean, Felice has a really, really good kicking game. And when I used to do any of the kickboxing stuff, that was my jam. I really like the way that she throws her kicks. I like the way that she no-sells a lot of them. It's you know, she's got a good style. Whereas Kowalkiewicz is somebody that really grinds her feet into the mat and really uses the ground to her advantage, at least when she was on her streak. I think this has the potential to be a little bit of a sad one. If Karolina isn't where she needs to be mentally. Obviously, Felice has gone off and done other things and has made money in other ways, and it doesn't seem to be as all in on fighting as most fighters are. But look, I think both of these women are pretty good in this division, and if they're anywhere near their best, it should be a fun scrap, if I'm honest.
Yes, indeed, it should be. Joe Salecki will take on Alex De Silva in the lightweight division. We're looking back at Alex De Silva, and I was really impressed with him, to be honest, in that fight with Brad Riddell. Didn't get the win, but showed some promise there. He was only 24. Is he still? He was 24 that fight. He's probably 25 now, I guess, but 26 now. So, I mean, he hasn't been there in a little while, but he showed some flashes of excellence in that fight. Didn't get the win. Again, the trend was started well, kind of teetered out as the fight went on. He has a nasty side kick to the knee, the controversial teep kick to the knee that Khalil Roundtree landed on Modestas Bukauskas. Looks for that, has a takedown in him. Explosive striker as well. That's probably down to the fact why he tires out is because he does go head hunting a little bit, but anything he does throw, he throws with great ferocity. He's going in against Joe Salecki. Joe Salecki just wants to take you down, man. He just wants to close the distance. He wants to get you down, and that's exactly what he's going to want to do in this fight against De Silva. Salecki is good when he's on top. struggles a little bit when he's on the bottom, if I'm being honest. Accepts position, doesn't look to sweep, doesn't look to get back up to his feet, more so maybe trying to reverse position. It hasn't worked for him so far. I do worry for Salecki in this fight. If he doesn't get the fight down, I think he's going to get up on the feet. There's a big gap in the class of striking between these two guys. But, you know, Riddell managed to get the Silva down later on. If it could be a thing for Joe Salecki, come in here, weather the early storm, bring it into the later rounds, and he might be able to get something done. But an interesting stylistic matchup. I'm looking forward to seeing Alex De Silva in there. I'm looking forward to seeing what improvements he has in his game. Should be a decent fight. Anybody have anything to add about Alex De Silva or Joe Salecki in this fight, guys, before we move it on?
I think this is an early finish.
You reckon Alex De Silva will probably get it done early? Yeah, I kind of think so as well. I think Salecki is not going to be able to get him down, and I think that I think De Silva is going to knock him out. Damon Jackson,
just to be the contrarian.
Yeah, Damon Jackson versus Daniel Argueta in the 145-pound division. All my notes are
my guy, Damon Jackson, legend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sean, you're excited about this.
Fight.
I know on the state of the UFC address, you could not contain your excitement about Damon Jackson coming in here against the undefeated Daniel Argueta.
Just an absolute, let me just pull up my topology here. Just 20 wins, only 4 losses and 1 draw. The Leech, along with Pollyanna, wow, what a nickname. Like, just unbelievable. Like, his win over Camila Kirk, Charles Rosa. I love a bit of Charles Rosa on the ground. Look, he beat Team Sheehan's Mirsad Bektic back in 2020. That's a great win. He fought Kabulov in PFL. I'm a big PFL fan. He lost that fight in 10 seconds around 1. But look, these things happen. But all in all, what a fighter. What a fighter he is. Lost to Lancy Mineras, beat Leonard Garcia. How do you not get...
Does a win over a Team Sheen member get you kind of on the path?
You gain respect, kind of like, Henry Sheffield and Brian Cody. You gain that respect by
heavy handshakes after the wins and stuff, yeah?
Dirty looks and heavy handshakes. That should be the name of this podcast. Dirty looks and heavy handshakes. But indeed, yeah, and fair play to him. Damon Jackson. Sorry, Harry, I apologize. My bullshit.
Right. I've actually got about 800 words of notes, so let me rattle through these.
Why would you do something like that?
Because I was given 3 fights to research, so I did my research. Look, the first thing that's really interesting here is Argueta is a bantamweight and has been a bantamweight for his whole career. Now, 2 fights ago, he missed weight, and then they put him in a title fight because these things happen in regional MMA, right? But
for microphone, go ahead.
But one thing, okay, so what is Argueta? Argueta is still a pretty green fighter. He's a good grappler. He has some really nice entries to double legs and single legs. He has a really quick level change. And when he gets on the ground, he fought a gentleman called Mandalo, and he absolutely murked that dude. It was a flawless win. Mondala. He takes him down. Mondala turtles. He rides his hips. He puts him down. He passes his guard. And then he just starts landing elbows, lads. Really, really nice spatial awareness to use the forearm and the point of the elbow as a frame on his jaw. What happens when you plant the jaw into the mat? You can't move your shoulders. What happens if you can't move your shoulders? You can't move your hips. What happens if you can't move your hips? You're fucking stuck is what happens. So he oscillates between pinning him with his elbow to slamming his elbow in his face. He forces a guard pass, takes the mount, from mount, armbars him. Beautiful. Lovely stuff. Really, really nice. The next 2 fights has a bit of a struggle. We have a split decision win in the title fight before he gets to the UFC. Lots and lots of grappling back and forth. One thing I don't like about Argueta is he accepts bottom position. He's happy to try and do the I'm a jiu-jitsu guy and try and sweep or try and submit. But there's no hesitation of I'm going to play bottom because this is how jiu-jitsu works, right? I've been put on my back, therefore I must play bottom. This is something, and I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here, this is something that needs to change in MMA. Sean has talked about it for a long, long time. If your back hits the mat and you're not Andre Muniz, get up. whether you have to open your legs and force a scramble, whether you have to be landing so many fucking elbows from the bottom that your man tries to dive on a submission and you try and get up, whether you're getting feet to hips and just pushing people away, whether you're moving between submission attempts and sweep attempts just to create some sort of space, whether you're butt scooting to the cage and getting up, you have to fucking get up. The moment your back hits the mat, you are losing. The ability for the top fighter to land damage is overwhelmingly in their favor. If you hit the bottom against Damon Jackson, you're getting head and arm triangled, lads. That's what's happening, right? In the fight against, I can't remember. I probably should have written his name down. Please hold while I Google Damon.
The Camuela Kirk fight, last fight.
Thank you. The Camuela Kirk fight. Camuela Kirk, decent striker, good on the feet, long, karate style, uses his strength well, uses his length well. As soon as Damon Jackson drops him to the mat, what happens? He's looking for head and arm triangles. What happens late in the second round? Gets a head and arm triangle. If I'm Damon Jackson, I'm using size, I'm using strength, and I'm using veteran savvy that he does have. Damon Jackson's no mug on the feet. He's all the way out. He covers distance really well. He has a lovely double jab on him, whether it comes immediately out of the combo or straight after the right hand. He works really well on getting in. And when he does get to his grappling, he's good, man. He's good. So if I find myself as Damon Jackson up against an Argueta, who I'm arguably bigger than, I'm going to try and big brother this dude. And I think that's what happens.
Like a fucking doctor, Harry Powell. Like a doctor. You're not going to hear a better breakdown of that fight this week. Moving on to the lightweight division again, Benoit Saint Denis against Nicholas Stolze. Spencer, one I remember from Benoit Saint Denis, it was a guy I was kind of keeping an eye on. In UAE Warriors, he had a couple of great wins, and he moved over and had his UFC debut, and almost got killed against Alessio Zaleski. That Russian referee was right. He was rightly taken off the card and should never ref again after that decision. Right.
I have a meme in my phone of that guy. Let me see if I can find it.
Oh my God, it was absolutely disgraceful. But talk to me about this fight, Spencer. You know, he did get beaten badly that last fight, but he is a decent fighter overall, and I think the referee probably should have saved him, and hopefully it hasn't cost him in the long run, and he's in his career in the long run too, the damage that he took in that fight.
Yeah, so both guys are moving down to lightweight for this one. Both last couple of fights were at welterweight, or at least Saint Denis first in the UFC was. Nicholas Stolze's 2 fights in the UFC had been at welterweight before that. So we're going down. We'll see what that has to do with it. This to me is as you said, is Saint Denis a guy that is just stupid tough and can take a beating, or can he dish some out as well? Stolze got knocked out in a heartbeat by Jared Gooden last time out on short notice. Got face planted with a right hand. Saint Denis, for as much of an ass kicking as he took in that fight, and listen, first and foremost, it should have been stopped. I will always err on the side of protecting fighters and saving fighters from more punishment. I hate that there were people at the end of that fight as Saint Denis was coming on, because Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos got exhausted from beating the shit out of him for so long that Saint Denis started to have some success himself. And people were like, see, it shouldn't have been stopped. No, that fight should have been stopped. That referee rightfully was removed from the card and has never been seen again in the UFC. Should never be seen again in the UFC or any kind of reasonable organization going forward. But I want to see if this is a guy that can learn from that fight and take some of that toughness and translate it into functional success. Can there be functional growth because, all right, I know I can take the best these guys are going to give out. It's not a kind of thing that you necessarily want to bank on is, hey, I'm tough enough to take a beating. But this is a fight where we should find out whether it's he's just really tough and is going to be in some more of these super entertaining slobber knocker kind of battles, or maybe there's a little bit more.
Yeah, it should be a good and interesting fight, both moving down, as you said. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm pretty high on Benoit Saint Denis. I think the move down in weight will be good for him as we move on to the bantamweight division. And my man Tony
G. Let's go. Tony
Gravely. a friend of Severe MMA now at this stage. I've had the pleasure of speaking to him a couple of times. Coming in here against Johnny Munoz Jr. I know Tony Gravely was looking for the Chris Gutierrez fight. He said that was the fight that interested him. He didn't get that, but he gets a guy in Johnny Munoz Jr. who is a very well-rounded fighter overall. In reality, a decent boxer, has a good solid ground game, is a slick submission artist. This is a fight I don't think that Munoz is going to want to take this far. Is going to have the ability to just simply take Tony Gravely down. So I'm curious to see if he chose to stand and bang with him. Gravely has some good power, but his striking in comparison to his wrestling is definitely not as good. I think he's been clipped before and hurt against Nate Maness. I think Munoz will think that he can clip him again. I think Gravely will probably want to lure him into what he thinks will be a striking match before dropping in and initiating a takedown here. So it's a good, interesting clash of styles here. I know you're very familiar with Tony Gravely as well, Sean. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, I like this. I watched a good bit of both of them before the betting show as well, mostly. And that Nate Maness fight is very interesting when they've both fought him. And I think, with a bit of MMA maths added in here, Maness beat Munoz pretty badly in the clinch and was stronger than him, was able to get not necessarily get a lot of takedowns from him, but was able to dominate in that position, whereas Gravely actually dominated in that position in their fight. So if you're to do a bit of MMA maths there, who's stronger in the clinch, you'd probably give it to Gravely. And I have a feeling this fight could come down to a clinch battle because they'll both want to take it to the ground in their area, I feel like, and they'll both want to avoid getting it to the ground where they don't want it. I think Gravely needs to be careful. Having said that, though, Johnny Munoz jiu-jitsu is really, really good. So if he doesn't get him down I wouldn't, like, if I was Tony Gravely here, I'd be happy enough to take him down, get into his guard, maybe half guard, probably the best position for him here. Control it, get your top control, for your 3 minutes, land your ground and pound and win your rounds like that if you want to do it. I'm interested in what you said there on the feeding. I find it hard to actually gauge how good either guy is on the feed. I would say Gravely's a little bit better, to be honest. But I think a lot of Gravely's, he's your old school wrestle boxer, I think, who's a good straight up 1-2 down the middle and likes to get the fight to the ground. Whereas Munoz, myself and Ian and Spencer talked about what's his name, the middleweight, Muniz. The other day, and talked about his striking a little bit and how it's what's the word I would use for it? I suppose functionally wild in certain ways, but way better than Munoz's. Munoz is like a shittier version of Muniz. And I think if Gravely keeps it on the feet, I think if the fight is on the feet, I do think Gravely will win. But you make a great point, Ian. He's been touched before. He's been knocked out before. And Gravely, the biggest issue I think with Tony Gravely is if it's a fight on the feet, his cardio goes way quicker than if it's a fight on the ground. He's well able to fight. He could fight 10 rounds wrestling, but he finds it very tough to fight 3 rounds of striking. So if it does turn into that striking matchup and he wins the first 2 rounds, I still wouldn't rule Munoz out, to be honest. But it's a fight I'm looking forward to. Do you know what as well? How good of a fighter is Nate Maness? He's beaten both of these guys. Yeah. Maybe he's a guy who doesn't get enough credit as well, but this is a good fight too.
Definitely. Fighting Umar Nurmagomedov later this month.
Oh, shit.
Hell of a fight.
Oh, yeah. That's a great fight.
Interesting fight on that.
Wow.
I think it's on the June 26th card.
And I have to say, just a little snippet maybe on the Gravely and Maness fight is that I feel if round 1 had it been 15 seconds or 10 seconds longer, Gravely might have got him out of there in that fight as well. So that's another point. I mean, I think Gravely definitely has the power advantage, so it's an interesting stylistic matchup. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Obviously, we have one eye on Gravely here at Severe MMA, so it'll be interesting to see both of them on the cusp of outside the rankings in the 135-pound division. So maybe the winner will get a ranked opponent next. It'll be interesting to see. Harry, speak to me, please, sir, about Jeff Molina versus Zaglis Amigulov, please.
Our friend here, Mr. Blithering Rando, says this card does not have a lot of big names on it, but it's kind of the card that will have hungry fighters wanting to stand out. What fights do you expect to be bangers? This one is the answer. So, Zalgas is a man that does not care about his own health. Does not give a single fuck. He is super wild. He's got a ton of pace, a ton of pressure. I can still hear myself in my own headphones. And look, his base is wrestling, right? His base is grappling. And the thing that I've noted down here, let me find it, is it feels like a lot of people expect when they go in to an MMA fight that they expect to go in and exchange in some sort of sporting affair. A sort of a non-conversational pace will be set, and they will both offer whatever they have in their arsenal, and whoever wins, wins. Zalgas goes in there to have a fight with you. He doesn't care about sporting aspects. He doesn't really care about, pace setting or whatever. He's got a gas tank. He can go. He can wrestle, and his striking is super wild. The only thing I really enjoy about Zalgas' striking is he has a really interesting setup to a left body shot. So he stands in his orthodox stance. He goes to switch hit, but he doesn't quite switch hit. And when he's landing, he's almost square. And he's using all of that movement and all of that weight to slam a left hook into your liver. And I really like it. It's fucking beautiful. For Jeff Molina, in his fight against, again, can't remember, terrible with names, but he got a bit bullied. He got a bit physically pushed around in one of his most recent fights. And eventually he caught your man with a right. Oh, it was Alex De Silva, something De Silva.
Daniel
De Silva. Thank you. Who I really like, actually. He's got a very interesting style. Similar that he pushes a pace like Zalgas, but in a very different way. Molina, if I'm fighting Zalgas here, has to do a number of things. The first thing is he has to act a little bit like Manel Cape did, where he has to give him lots of footwork looks, and he has to hit him, and he has to hit him hard. If he doesn't, Zalgas will run him around the cage for 15 minutes and touch him and touch him and touch him. I think Jeff Molina does have the footwork to do it, and I think he has the ability to hurt him. But one thing Molina struggles with is grappling. As soon as it hits the mat, the first 4 minutes against Daniel De Silva, he was in a triangle, 2 arm bars, and had his back taken. Zalgas can grapple. Make no mistake about that. So I think that's something Molina has to absolutely be wary of. But this is and should be a banger.
Absolute banger alert. The Red Sirens will be up ahead of this fight on Saturday night, which brings us to the welterweight division. Andreas Michailidis versus Rinat Fakhretdinov. Fakhretdinov actually got picked up by the UFC a bit off Dana White's looking for a fight the last time that they were over, and he was watching UAE Warriors. He absolutely sent Eric Spicely to the shadow realm in that fight. It was an awful knockout, a scary knockout.
Tough one for Spicely.
Whew, it was a nasty, nasty one. He's coming in here and they're throwing him Andreas Michailidis, which they always do. If you're Andre Michailidis, what are you going to be doing? You're going to be fighting a pure striker and who's making their UFC debut, because you know what? Michailidis is going to play to that game. He's going to want to strike with you. And why the fuck not? Who wants to see Michailidis get in there, get taken down, and then struggle on the mat? Let's throw some leather, as they say. And this fight will be there'll be plenty of leather. There'll be plenty of leather thrown in this fight. So I mean, that's all. This is good. Potential banger alert here as well is that someone is probably going to get knocked the fuck out in this fight, and I'm looking forward to seeing it for that reason alone. This brings us on to the last fight of the night, but still an interesting fight. All the same, Spencer. And I know that you're very high on Erin Blanchfield. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about her. She goes in there against a tough opponent in JJ Aldrich.
I mean, she might be the best prospect in the UFC. And I know that's saying a lot. She's 23 years old. She's 8-1. She fits this question from Blithering Rando in terms of hungry fighters that could stand out. A lot of people got really surprised when she went out last time and just manhandled Miranda Maverick, who we all kind of understand is a big athlete and a powerful athlete in the flyweight division. And Erin Blanchfield just tossed her around the cage, dominated her in the clinch against the fence, dragged her to the floor, kept her there, absolutely dominated her. Legitimate black belt, jiu-jitsu black belt, developing striking, good athlete, super like she is to me a complete package and another one of these people. Casey O'Neill's sort of ahead of the pack in terms of the prospects at 125 right now, and because she's had 4 fights and 4 wins and heal up King Casey, get back from that knee injury. But Erin Blanchfield to me is the one that can be the champion down the line. She can be somebody that rises through those ranks pretty quickly in the next couple of years. It is astonishing to me that this is the first fight of the night. I'm happy that I'm going to watch it at 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday with a cup of coffee and, some scrambled eggs. But this is a huge test. It's a good test. JJ Aldrich, I know Shawnee loves him some JJ Aldrich, a good Irish woman that throws a 1-2 and moves her feet well. It's a solid test. She's won 3 straight fights. Aldrich had. This is the step up she needs, that Blanchfield needs to take. It's the hurdle she needs to clear. I think she clears it in pretty dominant fashion and like pretty convincing fashion. And even more people are joining me on the bandwagon after this.
You're really confident that she's going to make waves in the division, Spencer. You think, in your opinion, she's championship materials at something? It's very young still in the game as well, obviously enough, but she's plenty of time to work on that and has a good ceiling.
I do think so. I mean, obviously development isn't linear. Health is a big part of it. Where you're training and who you're training with, and all of those things are all factors. But if she continues to progress the way she has and show the things she's shown at this young age, like we see so many young fighters that come in that on the regional circuit, they weren't fighting anybody. They were fighting, weekend warriors. She beat Kay Hansen in her second or third fight. She fought Tracy Cortez. Her lone loss is Tracy Cortez. I still go back, watch the fight. It's a split decision. I think Blanchfield wins clearly. And so Tracy Cortez has gone on to have some good success in the UFC. She's got a win over Victoria Leonardo, who is in the UFC. Brogan Walker, who is on The Ultimate Fighter this season, season 30. She fought good competition all the way along as an 18 through 22-year-old, and then got to the UFC and has just dominated two more competitors. And so if she continues to build and just kind of add to the striking, get the striking to where you have to really respect it and can't just sell out defensively, I think she absolutely can be somebody that's a top 5 fighter in this division inside of 3 years and then for a very long time after that.
Nice. It'll be exciting to see her and if she can do that. Guys, that rounds us up for UFC Fight Night Volkov versus Rozenstruik preview show. But now we're going to answer, and Spencer and Harry are going to have to ask you to take a back seat, please, on this one. We have to answer the big questions. And one of the biggest questions of the weekend, will it be Cody? Will it be Shefflin? I'm not too confident, to be honest. We haven't looked good lately, Sean. We haven't looked good lately. I mean, I'm going to give a biased view on this, to be honest. You're going to give an unbiased view from a man looking from the outside in. What have you seen so far? I mean, Kilkenny's performances haven't been that good lately. They're really going to have to up their game. They were beaten by Galway already this year. I mean, it's not looking too promising for Kilkenny. I'm not going to lie. We'll never lie down and be beaten, but we have to really up our game from the last 2 games against Wexford and Dublin.
You were in that game against Galway, you were kind of robbed, but also you kind of robbed them because you were so far down and kind of came back late. But that doesn't say much for Galway either, if that's the way they're. Like, I think if we're saying who'll win the All-Ireland this year between Kilkenny and Galway, I would go with Kilkenny, to be honest. But on Sunday, I would probably go with Galway because I think you have a bit more smarts about you, but they have a bit more nuance about it. It's that it'll be a good game, but God Almighty, Limerick and Clare is the real game of the weekend. That's the biggest and highest level sporting occasion on planet Earth this weekend. 4:00 Sunday, a clash of the Titans, the 2 best teams on planet Earth in the best sport on planet Earth, going head to head after having a draw 3 weeks ago with all their best players back. The Mick Mackey Cup, Limerick's legend, the first time ever. God Almighty, what a
I should have fucking known that you were going to turn it into somehow to do it. I should. It's going to be a great weekend of hurling. It's going to be a good weekend of fights. It's getting us nicely warmed up for the big UFC 275 card next week, which we will be back to preview in detail. A card I'm really looking forward to. Yuri Prochazka challenges Glover Teixeira for the light heavyweight championship. Valentina Shevchenko defends her title against Talia Santos. And also, Zhang Weili takes on Johanna Jędrzejczyk in a rematch for the ages. What a fucking fight. And what 3 fights. Ooh, Manuel Cape versus Rodrigo Bontorin as well. Oh, unbelievable. What a card. I can't wait. I wish we could break it down tomorrow, lads. But you're going to have to wait until next week, unfortunately. We'll see everybody then to break down that card. Enjoy the fights this weekend. Up Kilkenny, down Limerick. We're going to...
I waited till the end.
Thanks very much for listening and watching. Go and follow Spencer Kite at eSpencerKite on Twitter. Sign up to his Keyboard Kimura blog. Brilliant stuff by Spencer. Go and look at Shawnee over on Sherdog.com. He has some great shows up there. Go and follow Harry Powell at BJJ_Harry Powell. Check out his Severe Spotlight this Monday and every Monday after a hectic weekend of fights. Go and follow all the guys. I think, Sean, you're looking for a few followers now as well, isn't it?
I'm almost there. I'm almost past SevereMMA. So yeah, do give me a follow. But then once I get past it, just stop following me. So if you're listening to this, I've passed out SevereMMA. Don't follow me. Thanks.
You can catch me at IO'NeillMMA on Twitter, talking all kinds of stuff. I'll be live tweeting this Saturday. I'm on Patreon, the Owl Triangle podcast. You can see me there as well. Sign up to the Patreon, lads. It's brilliant stuff. Check out the free podcast that's just gone up now as well, with all the highlights from the last month, featuring everybody here. The best value for money in mixed martial arts right now. SevereMMA Patreon. Sign up. Good luck. God bless. Thank you. Up the Cats. Up Kilkenny. Let's go.